Hello guys, For Collector here, bringing you another beautiful banknote. This time it's a $20 national currency. This is series 1882, issued during the second charter period, and this is Freeburg number 555. So before we delve into this banknote, let's learn a little bit about national currency, the history of national banknotes.
To remedy the financial disarray caused by dubious private banks issuing obsolete currency and to restore public confidence as paper money, National Currency Act of 1863 was signed by President Lincoln. This gave birth to national chartered banking system and universal national currency.
Banks were chartered for a period of 20 years, and after that banks would have option to renew their charter. Large-size national currency was issued over 3 charter periods. Banknote design would change at the start of each new charter period.
So large-size national banknotes were issued over 3 charter periods, starting in 1863. Each charter period lasted about 20 years. And here I have example from each of those charter period. Every time they transition to a new charter period, they would change the design of the banknote. So on the top here, we have a $1 ace from the first charter period. I have made a detailed video about this banknote, so make sure you check that out. The banknote we're going to talk about today is from the second charter period. For the first 2 charter period, as you may have noticed, they used historic and patriotic images as vignettes for the design. For the final charter period, the third charter period, they switched to having portraits of prominent Americans, mostly politicians, on the banknotes. And all of these banknotes are personalized with the name of the bank, the city and state where the bank was located, and then the signatures of the bank officials. So these national currency was, large-size national currency was issued for over 70 years during these 3 charter periods. And after 1929, they switched to smaller size national currency, national banknotes. This is about the same size of currency we have in our pockets today. Yet they are different because we continue to have the name of the local issuing bank listed on the currency along with their charter number. So this is a little bit of background about the different charter periods, the different designs that were used. The interesting thing is, even within a charter period, the design would change. Mostly for the second charter period, it had to do with the design on the back.
Second charter national banknotes comes in 3 varieties.
The series of 1882 comes in 3 different varieties. We have the original brownback series, which has the distinctive brown seal and brown serial number, followed by 2 emergency issues, the date back, which is what we have here, and the value back, which both of those have a blue seal and a blue serial number. Now, the reason for the emergency issue was the financial panic of 1907. That was because we had a shortage of paper money in the circulation and the supply could not keep up with demand. The whole reason behind that was many banks did not own the required amount of US bonds, so they could not increase the supply of paper money. So, to remedy that situation, Congress, a year later in 1908, passed this act called the Aldrich-Vreeland Act, which allowed banks to deposit things other than bonds as collateral. So they were able to deposit other securities such that they could, in an emergency, increase the supply of paper money. So since we had this change, a new act, the wording on the banknotes had to be changed. Before, it would say national currency, this note is secured by bonds of the United States, and underneath here it would say deposited with U.S. Treasury at Washington. Now, no longer we just had bonds, we had other securities, so they changed the wording and included or other securities, bonds or other securities. Since they made that change, they also changed the design, which is kind of unfortunate because the original brown back series was so beautiful, especially the back of the note. They had this beautiful brown color with, in the center, they had the bank charter number. So the date back and the value backs were issued with blue seals and green backs. So that's the reason behind the change in design during the second charter period. So let's take a look at the front design of this banknote. So this was issued by the Bank of Pittsburgh National Association in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One interesting thing about this banknote is the fact that this is one of only 16 banks that use the word National Association in its title. Now, Pennsylvania alone had about 250 different chartered banks that were issuing banknotes. That was more than any other state or territory. So certainly national currency from Pennsylvania is not rare. And certainly this bank issued a lot of banknotes, so which makes this particular national currency not a rare find. But what makes it rare is the fact that it's preserved in such beautiful condition without any folds or stains. Even the edges are quite crisp. I would say this is almost uncirculated condition. Now there are few different numbers here. This one here is the bank charter number 5225. This charter number would be on any banknote issued of any denomination issued by this bank would have this charter number. And this was issued by the government, so these were sequentially issued. So if you had a lower charter number, it was more prestigious because it meant that you had been chartered for a long period of time. And this number would go all the way up to 14,000 because that's the total number of chartered banks we had during the history of national currency. Second, we have two serial numbers. The one on the top here with a prefix, a letter prefix, is issued by the Treasury. So this is the Treasury serial number. It always ends with a bracket so that it cannot be tampered with. No one can add an extra digit at the end. The other serial number down here is the bank serial number. So for this bank during this charter period, for $20 denomination, this was the 23,717th banknote. So you can just tell by this number alone that they issued a lot of banknotes during this period. Next, we have a letter up here, E. Now this E is not same as this prefix. This E is a geographical letter. So E would stand for an eastern state. The other options would be N for north, S for south, W for west, Also, they had M for Midwest and P for Pacific. So this geographical letter made it easier for Treasury to sort banknotes, especially when they were redeemed. So it was sort of used to help Treasury sort their banknotes. Now there's another letter here, which is this B here, also seen down here. These national currencies were printed on a sheet of 4. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So the top one would be letter A, and then we have B, C, D. So this tells you the position of this banknote on the sheet of 4. This would be second from the top, hence the letter B. What else is there? We have 4 different signatures. This was quite common because you would have 2 signatures of the government officials. You would have the Register of the Treasury and then also the Treasurer of the United States. My signature combinations are Lyons and Roberts. These were printed on the banknotes. They were not hand signed. And knowing your particular signature combination is very useful because then you can figure out when exactly your banknote was printed. These 2 guys were in office during a certain period of time, and knowing what time period was that helps you figure out when this banknote was printed. So based on the Lyons and Roberts signature, I know that this banknote was printed sometime between 7 April 1898 and 30 June 1905. Now that's a big wide range. There is a date on this banknote, October 3rd, 1899. That is not the date this banknote was printed. This is probably the date when the charter was issued for this particular bank. Because from my research, this bank was opened in 1899 when it was chartered, and it was closed in 1931. Now, there are certain signature combinations that are very rare. Those are Rosecrans and Morgan, and also Vernon and McClung. So if you have those signatures, that banknote, even from a common bank, would be a rare issue. Now, down here, we have 2 hand-signed signatures of the bank official. So these were for the US government. They were printed. When the whole banknote was finished with printing, the bank official, the cashier of the bank on the left, and the president of the bank would then sit down and hand sign each banknote. A lot of work. And looking at this hand signature, it's very crisp. If it's an older banknote and has a lot of wear on it, these signatures can become really faded. And here we have very crisp and sharp signatures. So this banknote is superbly preserved. So 4 signatures, 2 serial numbers. Now let's look at the edges. We have very ornate edges where we have the bank charter number, the denomination written out, and it's repeating itself all around. And down here in the bottom here, we have BEP, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, Treasury Department, and the wording here, will pay $20 to bearer on demand, Pennsylvania. Now let's look at the vignettes. So on the left here, we have vignette of the Battle of Lexington. Down here you can see Lexington 1775. So we have a patriot holding a musket rifle aiming at the British. So here we have a British soldier. You can barely make out. He's on a horse, mounted on a horse, and then whole cavalry here, the firing squad. And behind this stone wall, we have patriots, you know, firing back, fighting the British. So this is a scene of a battle which started the American Revolution. The independence of America was in year 1777, and this war was the beginning of that American Revolution in 19 April 1775. Down here we have a wounded soldier being attended to, and back here we have another patriot using a reamer to reload their musket rifle. So each time they would fire, they would have to reload. So this is the scene from the battle as it was happening in Lexington, Massachusetts. So this basically represents the patriots, you know, fiercely defending their homeland. This is based on a painting by Felix Darley, and it was engraved by Joseph Peace. Now this particular vignette comes in 2 or 3 different varieties based on if you have number 75 right above this wounded soldier's right foot. Mine does not have that 75, so that was the earlier vignette. The next 2 vignettes do have a 75. One has a very light shade of 75, and the other one has a very bold 75. So that's just the minor differences in vignette itself. So basically a little bit more about this Battle of Lexington in 1775. Basically, this battle was fought in Massachusetts. It involved the towns of Concord and Lexington, and it kick-started the American Revolution. Basically, British Army wanted to seize and destroy all the ammunition and supplies that the American militia had in Concord, and they succeeded in doing that. But during this battle, the Americans were able to push back well-equipped British Army back to Boston. So that was a huge morale booster for the American militia fighting, you know, the King's Army and being able to push them back. That was a huge deal. About 49 US soldiers were killed and about 73 Britishers were killed. So this is to commemorate the Battle of Lexington. On the other side, we have an allegorical figure, a female allegorical figure called Columbia, holding an American flag. And up here, if you can see behind this serial number, it says loyalty. So this whole scene represents loyalty, basically representing Columbia, representing the country of America, you know, celebrating its victory over British. So Columbia holding a flag, leading this procession of people cheering and fighting for their country. So beautiful, beautiful vignette. So these 2 vignettes are just stunning, and I think it just adds so much character to this banknote. Now let's take a look at the back of the banknote. The back of the banknote, like we talked about, changed 3 times. Initially we had the brown back where we had the bank charter number in the center. I think that was the best issue. It was very visually appealing. The second was this date back, and eventually we would have the value back. So date back has the year 1882, 1908 in the center, and the value back would have $20, the denomination written out. On either side, on this particular date back, we have the American bald eagle. On the left, we have the bald eagle with its wings open, ready to fly. It's sitting on the Union shield, and the bald eagle is always shown with arrows on its one talon, and the other talon has, you know, the olive branch. So basically balancing peace and war. On the other side, we have the same bald eagle, more or less standing this time instead of ready to fly. And by its side, we have the Union shield with stars and stripes. And then again, it's holding, you know, arrows and olive branch. So those are the two vignettes on either side. And then we have a lot of legal text, the anti-counterfeiting text down here. And, you know, the border is again made up of this, some sort of micro printing of 20 national currency all around. So still pretty beautiful back, greenback, what's called a date back. So altogether, this is a beautiful, beautiful banknote. Now, for the third charter period, we would transition to a different design with, you know, a portrait, and eventually we would move on to a smaller size currency after 1929, which was a shame because these other larger size banknotes were so gorgeous, but a little bit impractical to put in your wallet. So this is perfectly sized for wallet, but it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for design and vignettes. But these were still pretty popular because you can collect all different cities and states based on where the bank was located. This one is from New York. That's pretty cool. This one here is from San Francisco. Obviously, this one is Pittsburgh, and then this $1 ace was from Indiana, Lafayette, Indiana. So collecting national currency is so much fun, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Do share and like, and keep collecting.